SNP's Ian Blackford suffered an intense grilling over his party's attempt to use Boris Johnson's latest Brexit proposals as a recruiting sergeant to break up the United Kingdom. The SNP's Westminster leader told Channel 4 News host Cathy Newman the government is trying to undermine the Scottish Parliament and the will of the Scottish people who voted for their devolved MSPs in Scotland with its latest Brexit Internal Market Bill. But the Channel 4 News host accused Mr. Blackford of using Boris Johnson's plan to further his party's agenda for an independent Scotland. Mr. Blackford was also confronted on the fact that if Scotland were to rejoin the EU, his government would not be able to decide on how EU funds were spent in his own country. Ms. Newman said, "The bill allows for money that was held by the EU and unelected commissioners to come back to Westminster, where you have representation." To which the SNP politician replied, "The spending that takes place in Scotland today with EU funds, like in the SEP for example, like in regional funding, is determined by the priorities of the Scottish Government on behalf of the people of Scotland. This is the government that says they're going to go over the heads of the Scottish Parliament, over the heads of the MSPs that we elect, and Westminster will determine the priorities of spending in Scotland." The Channel 4 News host rebutted, "But you can argue the toss over that in there where you've got a seat. You can't do that in the EU with these commissioners." Mr. Blackford finally admitted, "The point is, Westminster is going to determine what happens with spending on roads and infrastructure in Scotland. We cannot have this. People in Scotland voted for a parliament with powers over devolved areas which Westminster is now going to legislate against. My message to the people of Scotland is if you want to stop Boris Johnson and Cummings and Gove, these are the three people behind this. The only way we can do that is to make sure we have the powers of that independent Scotland." To which Ms. Newman blasted, "There we get to the crux of it. You're actually using this as a recruiting sergeant for your independence cause to break up the union."